Oh, welcome to the Black Script Storytellers. My name is Kevin Marable, and today our guest is the showrunner of the newly reimagined animated series Good Times, which is now streaming on Netflix. It's currently holding strong in the top 10. That's a tongue twister. She is here to talk to us about the new series as well as how she got into the TV and film business. Renata Shepard is with us. How you doing today, Renata?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining, man. I'm excited to speak with you.
Thank you. Top five. We're holding on. Come on, people. Keep watching. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So there's a question that I like to start off every interview with. It's a very simple question, but some might find it difficult to answer. Are you ready?
Mhm.
All right. And that question is, who is Renata Shepard?
Who is Ranada Shepard? Ranada Shepard is a whole person who pushes through anxiety,
Mm,
overcomes self doubt, and lands on a place of believing in herself and pushing herself out of her comfort zone daily. Daily. She's a whole ass writer, a whole ass mom, a whole ass wife. Not a whole ass, a whole ass.
right. A whole ass.
Yes. Um, a good friend, a person who's also re-raising herself,
Mm,
um, and who has committed to ending generational curses
mm.
and being a full person for myself and my kids and my husband.
Yeah.
And then she also writes, she does things in the business.
Right, right. You do many things in the business, and we're going to get into that for sure. But I like to start off with that question because it allows the audience to see the human side of you, and to be able to get to know you as a person and know who you are as a person first and foremost before we talk about what you do in the business.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's extremely important. I love that question
yeah,
because you know, we wake up as people before we start putting these hats on and making these decisions and these calls. And then we get off these calls and we're back to being these people. So
right.
and
Absolutely.
it is in this busyness and in a time like I'm in right now that you have to stand on solid ground and be reminded of who you are and
Mhm.
your fortitude and what you lean on um, in the chaos and in the busyness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, never waver.
Never. Don't fold. 10 toes down. Let's do this. We got this.
Yeah. Okay. So you are a writer slash producer, and you've been involved in several projects such as Young Love, Diary of a Future President, Act Your Age with Allison Faust. Hey, hey.
Yes. Yes.
And now we can add showrunner to your jacket with the new project Good Times, which is the reimagined animated series now on Netflix. Um, how did this project come about?
Oh, it's really interesting. Great question. I got a call from Sony as I was finishing up Young Love.
Mm,
And they said they had been working on this reimagination for about a year and a half or 2 years and had reached a standstill. And they were looking for someone with a take on it to get it to air. And as I told them, um, I'll land the plane. Just give me the space and the resources to land the plane. And here we are. The plane has landed.
the plane has landed. And
Yes.
how does it feel to now have a hit series such as Good Times on Netflix that's in the top 10?
Oh, it feels amazing for so many different reasons. It is extremely hard
Hmm.
to get a show to the world. It is extremely hard to get over that hump of the world is actually looking at your baby. And so I'm so excited. I'm so proud. It's also the added gift of it being Norman Lear and being a reimagination of one of my favorite shows in this world. So there's so many reasons it's so special. And then I'm just excited that we were able to take adult animation to a space where, Black people and Black characters and Black voices are taking up space in this social commentary world. and really, delivering layered ideas. That's just exciting to me because this is a white male market of adult animation. We see it. Rick and Morty, Family Guy,
Yeah.
South Park, American Dad. You will know of a few Black writers on
Mhm.
those shows, but I can probably count them on one hand. And
Right.
also as a woman, like real
Right.
talk, this is not a woman's space technically in
Mhm.
Hollywood. And I'm just so grateful to be here and taking up this space, but also that we delivered bold and we delivered loud, because that would have been the worst nightmare for me is if the perception of it was that it wasn't fitting the genre, and it fits, so I'm really proud of what we did.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into all of the amazing Black voices that are a part of this series, can you tell me what this version of Good Times is about?
This is the fourth generation, so you'll meet Reggie Evans, who's actually JJ's son.
Okay.
So Florida was his grandmother, right? And so Reggie, the fourth generation, is raising the fourth generation, his kids. So
Mhm.
it's JJ's son was Reggie, Reggie's wife, Beverly, and then their three kids, Junior, Gray, and Dalvin. And it really is a modern day take on what surviving the system feels like today, truthfully, at its core. It's a family surviving the system
Mm.
in Chicago, in a world where there's one last standing project building and they're in it and they're making the best of it, and watching them not only make the best of the circumstances in the building, but also around the city.
Right. Right. And now, if you could, there's so many all-star voices that are part of this cast. You have Yvette Nicole Brown, JB Smoove, Marseille Martin, Jay Farrow, Norman Lear, Tisha Campbell, and more. Can you talk a little bit about the decision in casting these incredible talents to be a part of this series?
Oh my gosh. It's, you never get everything you want. And I feel like I got everything I wanted in the cast, right? Like
Right.
it is a dream come true. So actually, when I came on board, it was fully casted, and I had to look at the pieces because I really did pretty much reshape the entire show. So
Oh
Yvette
wow.
Nicole Brown was already on board. Slim Johnson was already on board as Dalvin, and Cree Summer was already on board as
Yeah.
voice director. So she
Yeah.
hadn't been assigned voices yet, but she was definitely our voice director, which hats off to Cree. This is her first step from just voicing to actually being voice director. And she did a phenomenal job.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, it's so great. I mean, give this woman her flowers. She's so great and talented. And also, just a sidebar from voices, Ninth Wonder was already on board for musical scoring.
Oh wow. The producer Ninth Wonder. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
he's an executive producer as well as he scored the entire series.
Yes.
So those were the pieces that were set in place. And then I'm like, okay, now let's play this game. I need a Reggie. And the gift of Black Hollywood is that we stick tight
Mhm.
together and we're all just a phone call away because we understand how much we actually need each other. And so we tend to support each other and be there for each other.
Mhm.
I have the gift of Allison Faust being my mentor, as well as my husband, Devon Shepard, has been writing in television for 32 years. So I don't think there is anyone we can't call. So I was like, JB, you worked with JB on Cedric the Entertainer Presents. Okay, I need JB. Tisha, we are like a once a week call
Yeah.
already. And then it just happened later that they were both cast at an actor age, but this happened prior to actor age.
Wow.
Marseille, love and adore her parents. I called her mom, like, hey, I need her. She's perfect for this.
Mhm.
Jay Farrell, another one for my husband Devon. Can you call Jay? I need Jay for this. And it's interesting, just to back up a little bit. Reggie is such a big character. It takes up a lot of space
Hmm.
on screen. And it was so great that JB was able to bring such vulnerability and silliness to this guy who
Yeah.
also didn't jeopardize his manhood. You still knew he was a guy who would protect his family, work hard, and be the man of the house, but also like had a layer of vulnerability that I absolutely love. Yvette is just the quintessential Black mother. Like she just, I mean, you give it to her and she just takes it away and she just gives it to you in the way that your mother said it to you. You're like, that's how my
Right.
mother does that. Like that's crazy.
They all have
um,
relatable characteristics to them for sure.
they do. Jay Farrow, I was a little worried about because, and I say only because I struggle with adults playing teenagers. Even if you can get a voice, there's typically a knowingness in your voice
Mhm.
where it wouldn't have that teen vulnerability. And he landed the teen vulnerability. I really believe this kid is naive, right? You don't second guess it for 1 second. Marseille was so great because she was coming out of the Disney space and
Mhm.
really loved the idea of adult animation. She's like, this is on my list. Like, I want to do this, you know? But
Yeah.
also like she got to curse and get a little dirty in a way that Disney, the mouse, is not going to let you do all that. So
Right.
it was great. She's like, I mean, am I really supposed to say this word? I'm like, let me close my ears. Yes, you could say it. Like I'm struggling with her, you know, because
Uh,
she's still a baby in my eyes. Slink Johnson's so great. Oh, for those that know him as Black Jesus, it was really special to me because yes, this is a baby, but you know we call our babies Halo Man because we have those mannish babies that we have in our world,
right.
and so he was able to bring that mannish quality. You know, we
Yes.
probably wrote areolas, and he's like areolas. You know, he's got to change it and make it his thing, and you're like, oh, so good.
Right. Yeah.
And then, as our quote unquote Walona lashes by Lisa Rashida Sheets Alaya Wala, who's also
Mhm.
our writer, she voiced her, and she just brought a rawness of her, Beverly's real girl. Like,
Mhm.
you know, she will fight for Bev. She will do uh, a stalking
Everything.
situation, anything, right? She
Right.
will do anything for Bev. And she had a rawness and a real Chicago, not even just an accent. You just knew like it was just so raw and real in Chicago. I was like, this is perfect. And it just, the beauty of that cast, I got to tell you, Kevin, no one recorded with anyone else. And when you listen to that show, the
Really.
way they bounce off of each other,
Yeah.
you would
You
think
can't
they were,
tell.
you cannot. Even when
No.
you see Gray and Junior fighting,
Mhm.
we never did playbacks and they were never in the same space at the same time because of COVID rules. So they just came in and did their lines. And I never said, oh, yeah, we just recorded Marseille. Let me play it back for you. No, they just took it
Did it.
and they just went with it. And that's between, gosh, the leadership and ear of Cree and just the talent of this cast. It was something really special.
Right. Because they bounce off each other like quickly. It's not. There's no delay or time or anything. Like the timing is perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm enamored by how all of that is put together, especially in when you're dealing with voice acting and animation, and you know how you tie everything together and make it all cohesive. Um, that's one thing that I'm interested in. Before we move a little further, I did also want to mention I didn't mention her in the list of the cast, but I spoke to her recently, and she did not tell me that she was on Good Times at the time that I interviewed her. But Jessica Michaela. Um,
Yes.
she's an awesome talent as well, and it's so amazing to interview her as well.
She's so great and her voice is so perfect and sweet as the friend. I mean, and I've known her since she was probably like 5, just from
Really?
her, yeah, and my son booking jobs together. So I've
Wow.
watched her grow up with my kids and just was like, this would be great. Let's bring her in. And I mean, she blew me away. Cree as well. We were like, wow, like
Yeah.
you bring somebody in that and you're like, I hope this goes well, and it just blows your mind. So she was so great.
Right, right. Now I want to backtrack just a little bit, and I want to ask about your role as producer slash showrunner. How did you get into this field to become a showrunner?
So interesting. I thought I was just going to produce. My
Mm.
first internship out here was at Edmonds Entertainment when Babyface and his ex-wife Tracy had their company. They had
Yes.
just done Soul Food. They had the overall deal. I was actually interning, and my intern boss was Devon Franklin. And gosh, we were in our 20s, and he had his shit together then. He had a path, he had a plan. He's like, so what's your purpose? I was like, I don't know. And I don't know why you know yours. Like, what is happening? We're supposed to know this at 23?
Mm.
Like, are you kidding me? Um, and from there, I sat on a desk of in-house counsel there, and this guy by the name of King Christmas, and he was managing Vincent D'Onofrio. Vincent D'Onofrio wanted to start a production company. He
Right.
was on Law and Order: Criminal Intent,
Yes.
and we went to New York and we shot his directorial debut. And I was their junior development exec. And I was like, oh, I picked the paint for my office. I picked my furniture. I mean, I was doing it. Okay. And then we went and shot the film. And now I produce a movie. Like, say less. Like,
Right.
just
Exactly.
give me the six-figure
Everything is happening.
salary. Yes.
Mm.
Give me the bins. Like, I'm good.
Mhm.
And we got back to the office, and I'll never forget. There was an issue where Vincent, I think, was at an airport and his car didn't come.
Mm.
And it was a little bit of a conversation of back and forth. And I was like, well, I don't want to manage talent. I thought I was making movies. Like, what are we doing? I'm a
Right.
junior development exec. Like, there's my title.
Mhm.
And then my boss at the time asked me to alphabetize his CDs. And I was like, I
Mm.
can't do
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah. That's
can't.
crazy.
This isn't it. So I was newly married at the time, and I told my husband, so I quit, and I've got ideas that we never got to produce.
Mhm.
You're a writer.
Mhm.
Let's be a power couple. I got the ideas. You write them. And he
Right.
was like, no. And I was like, oh my God, but we go together. Like, you're so mean. And he was like, writers don't want to write other people's ideas
Mm.
unless they're getting paid to do it. I don't want to write your shit. And I was like, wow, you're mean.
Yeah.
I was like, you'll be sorry. And so I went through his phone and I met with all his writer friends, and I was like, we're going to get an Emmy. You're going to wish you had done this.
Mhm.
And came back from those meetings in tears. And I was like, you're right. Nobody wants to write my shit. And he's
No,
like, you're
nobody. Nobody.
nobody.
Really.
Because I mean, it's like, hey, if you're successful, you got a pilot where somebody's paying you to write something. Why
Mhm.
do you want Joe Schmo to walk up with and say, I got an idea, you should write it? No, you should write it. It's your idea. And so I didn't understand that at the time. And he's like, you're a scared writer. Stop being scared and go learn how to write. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh my God. So I went to this program, Jeff Gordon's program called Writers Boot Camp.
Mhm.
And you leave with your first draft. And I did. And it was like actually really good. And his manager wanted to shop it. And then I was like, now what?
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
That's okay. And he was like, and now what? And I was like, what do we do next? He's like, well, you got to write more stuff. I was like, I got to keep doing this. So
Yeah.
that was how I got into it. And then I started writing and thought, wow, I'm going to have to figure out how to get in a writer's room and become a writer's assistant or a showrunner's assistant and then work my way up. And I knew the levels, and I, was hearing him talk about the room, and his conversations at the time was a very scary place. And I was like, oh, will I survive that? I don't know. All the politics. And sent a script to TV One because they were looking for original programming.
Right.
And D'Angela Proctor read it,
Mhm.
and she said, I like this script, but we don't want to do this. What about this one character? She's a born again virgin. Let's do a show around her. And I was like, nobody wants to see a show about somebody not getting any. Like, that's crazy. She was like, okay, well, then don't do it. And I was like, well, wait. I think I can figure this out. And so I sat with it for a couple of weeks, opened up the world, made her a blogger. and then came back and was like, okay, I got it. And I went from, in 2014, a non-union pilot to 2 seasons of television where Allison Fowles came on to be my mentor, to
Mhm.
be my blessing, my angel, and was like, I don't want your show, but I want to make sure you know how to do your job and that your show ends up well.
Yeah.
And she gave me on the job training,
Wow.
and the rest is history.
Wow. That is
And here
amazing.
I am 10 years later with the
Shout out to
reimagined
Allison,
vision.
man. Shout out to Allison. And also shout out to your husband for pushing you. Um,
Yes. I mean, I
even
have
though it was a little bit of tough love, it was a little bit of tough love, but
yes,
it kind of pushed you in the direction you needed to go.
absolutely. I would have gone in circles and maybe gotten there so much later in life.
Yeah.
And that's when those no's are no's
Right.
that you're thankful for because they change your life.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, Now, are you able to walk us through your role as showrunner or writer slash showrunner, especially for the animated series? Like, what was your role within this series?
So as the writer slash showrunner of the series, it really is first sitting with the concept and going, okay, why are we doing this? Why would one animate Good Times? One, that's a beautiful piece of work that can just be left where it is and you can never touch it.
Hmm.
You guys have sold this project. I've decided to come on board. What's my reasoning? Because I don't want to just animate conversations that could have been live action. What
Right.
world do we want to play in that this works? And the first concept for me that made it right was the idea of going to heaven. As we know, Florida looked up to the heavens
Right. Yes.
constantly. And my husband is a PK. So we talk a lot about, the relationships people have with God
Hmm.
and explore the concept of we all at some point have used God like a genie in a scratch off, like, please, please, please. And, you're like, God, I promise you, I won't ask you again. Please just make this come true.
Just this one thing.
Yes. And then next week you get a flat tire. You're like, okay, God, please, please. And I wanted to
Right.
explore what's happening in heaven.
Hmm.
That, you know, um, what was God's perspective on this? What was Jesus' perspective on this? And that was the first concept that was like, okay, let's go for this. Let's try this out.
Hmm.
So just initially taking personal stories from Chicago was my big, big thing. Like I
Hmm.
grew up on the south side of Chicago. The city is near and dear to my heart. The city is also one of the most politically corrupt cities. It's also one of the most racially segregated cities. And
Hmm.
so having that in my toolbox already and understanding, I went away to college, and the Chicago I returned home to with my kids later in life was not the Chicago I once lived in.
Right.
And a lot of onus was being put on the people, and specifically the Black people in Chicago, which pissed me off because none of it was being put on the politicians who
Right.
had allowed this to happen, in the sense that you took a vertical building
Mhm.
that you said was riddled with crime, and you took the people of that building and you spread them out horizontally and displaced them all over this city. And then you go, oh no,
Yeah.
Chicago, what happened?
Hmm.
Well, let's be clear. You conveniently, as a segregated city, didn't put them in specific neighborhoods. So let's not pretend like you don't know what happened. You look for Section 8, and you didn't do right by people in the sense of displacing them.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing for me to build within the building, to
Hmm.
understand that people have best friends, people have babysitters, people have hairstylists, people have confidants, like the community that exists. You don't get to just describe that as a place where, oh gosh, if you go in, you may not make it out. No, there are people having human experiences that aren't what you want to show on the news. We're so much more than what's put on the news, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So that was a big deal for me. So to go in and then staff the room and start to break these stories and realizing, yes, this is adult animation and we want to be loud.
Hmm.
I had taken the characters that were already in position from the sale of the show. And I was like, okay, if I can take these characters and justify why they are the way that they are, then we can do this. For instance,
Mhm.
okay, 18-month-old drug dealer. Sure, but why?
Right.
And at the time, it was just the concept of, oh, I just remember Dave Chappelle joke. Okay, that's the Dave Chappelle joke. How do we take this even further? And for
Yes.
me, one of the most heartbreaking moments in my life was watching George Floyd.
Oh, it's for everybody.
And
Yes.
right, we
Mhm.
all sat there, couldn't believe we were watching, hated that I was even watching it.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget, as we all will never forget, him calling out mama.
Right.
And in that moment for me as a mother, still gets me to this day. That at 55, 45, 15, 5 months, that's still somebody's baby.
Yeah.
And what has happened in society is we have glorified all the gangsters in the world, from the mob to narcos to the white collar Wall Street gangsters. Um, and suddenly, when it comes to us, our men are just vilified and just horrible. And it's only one place for them, prison, and just beat up on in such a way.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, there's no way you could ever make Junior the drug dealer, because society is going to expect that. They're going to, it'll be falling into the traps. But when
Right.
you put this on a baby, let me remind society that that is always somebody's baby. And so I constantly made sure we were always changing his diaper, nuzzling his neck, putting him on the changing table. He's in the carrier. He's putting his pacifier in his mouth and he's falling asleep. Because when we see that, I don't care what race you are, you go, oh, look at the baby.
Right.
But suddenly, for whatever reason, America doesn't tell us when they stop being cute babies, right? It's just suddenly my son is a threat and I don't even understand why, because he's still my baby. And so, really playing with that concept of Dalvin's doing some of the worst crimes. He's selling drugs, right? But
Mhm.
consciously, because he's only selling to the white people. But he's doing something that people would say, oh, he's a bad person, but he's
Right.
a baby.
Right.
And so there's layers to that I wanted to explore. So just that concept, and wanting to making sure I wanted, the original series.
Mhm.
When Florida tried to go to school, James told her, "Hey, it's only two places a woman belongs: the kitchen and the bedroom." Florida, the kitchen and the bedroom. So
Right.
I wanted Beverly to be president of the projects. I wanted to see her fulfilled in a way that was something different in that space.
Right.
Understanding that I wanted Gray to be woke, but I also wanted Gray to not know everything.
Mhm.
She's still learning about life, although she's woke.
Right.
Um,
It's that
Junior,
contrast, the
yes,
contrast.
the
Yes.
contrast, so like, and a woke person knows it all, but knows nothing. So let's go in there and really explore. Also with Junior, what does smart, talented, genius mean? Like, people will say, "Oh, Picasso is a genius," but suddenly a black kid in the inner city who is this school system is failing him is a loser, but also he's an artist that can just do amazing things. I don't think so.
Right.
So
Right.
let's really explore that. And so that was really big for me. And exciting to me. So that was, breaking down the characters. Then we would break down the episodes, and then we'd send in an outline. And once the outline was approved, we'd go to script, and that person would go write that script for a week.
Mhm.
And then come back to the room where we do our rewrites, our punch ups, and then we do a table read via Zoom so we could hear it on its feet. We could hear, because I'm not in this space every day with these actors. Let me hear JB's rhythm. Let me hear Yvette's rhythm, so you can write to the rhythm of how they talk.
Mhm.
And then from there, we would have temporary voicing from the table read that you could then send to the board artists who are now boarding this show. And it's just like a plain pencil drawing of scenes just to set up the shots, right? But not a lot of movement, just this is the angle. Sometimes you get some really cool things like, whoa, this board artist went over and beyond, like just add color to it. You think anyway. And then from there, we sent it to Australia to Moshi Animation Studio. and then they would animate. And so you're talking about so many different people and personalities involved at each stage that every time you got something, it was like Christmas because it was their interpretation of it. As
Right.
opposed to Act Your Age, we get a script and we take it to the stage and we know what they're going to do pretty much. You know, they still surprise you and they still play because they're talented,
Hmm.
but you pretty much know, right? With this, it was so different. And the only step that I forgot to tell you is because it's a new series, designing everything. What do they
Right.
look like? What
Yes.
is, does she wear a wedding ring? Does she wear a watch? What do the floors look like? Um, because it was the original unit, colors were a big deal to me. Textures
Mhm.
were a big deal to me. We did this medium where you could do really cool things like take a photo of actual wood and impress it into the animation. So it's very rich in texture and colors.
Nice.
We had an artist out of Brazil who designed the characters for us, and then took those designs and made them very specific because, you know, the beauty of life is what is problematic on facial features in America may not be problematic on skin tones or facial features in Brazil. And
Right.
so we were very hands on to the point where Tyree, my supervising director, was like, but they still have to be funny, Renata. And I was like, I know, but we know our people, and I don't want anybody feeling like we didn't put the time, dedication, and effort into this, even to the point of I was so excited when they said we're gonna do the inside of the palms lighter than the outside of the skin. And I was like,
Okay.
thank you. Let's
Yeah.
humanize is, you know, and have fun with this. So that was
That's a
the
lot of
process.
detail. Yeah, a lot of detail that goes into that, and
Yes.
I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth and conversation and approving things and sending things back and saying we would like it to look, this way opposed to this way. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, what does that timeline look like as far as once when you're going through that entire process and then you finally get everything down pat and now it's time to like completely animate everything. Um, what's the timeline between then and seeing a finished product?
I mean, it was the longest labor of my life. I felt like it was 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But you know, season two is a bit different because you're not designing everything,
Right.
but just having to design every little thing was so specific. But I think in, you know, if there was a future season, it would be more of like a 9 month process because sets are already built. You just go play in the world that you've created,
Wow.
which is fun and a lot easier to do. But yeah, it was about 2 years. I
Yeah.
mean, thankfully, of the COVID space, that people were comfortable even with recording all around the world because JB was on tour and
Yeah.
we weren't panicked. We were like, okay, well, there's a studio in New York. Can you get them there? Okay, sure. You know, so it was great in that way that it made it easier. And
Yeah.
honestly, that was the first time we did a screening a couple weeks ago. That was the first time the cast had ever been together, as well as myself in person with the entire cast.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw bits and pieces. I saw some clips of the screening. I saw everybody together, and it looked like an amazing time and amazing experience. And I know you guys were all happy to finally come together, watch the
Yes,
screening, and just kind of get the feel of the general reception of the show.
yes,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
I'm sure that was an exciting time for you guys.
It was really exciting because also too, you know, it's such a big project and it's so near and dear to everyone's heart. So you put a photo out there and people are like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Mhm.
And you're like, "Okay, well, it's good times. It's coming soon. I don't know about this." And then you put a trailer out there and they're like, "Oh my god!" Half the world's like, "No." Half the world's like,
Right.
"This is really funny," right?
Right.
And so at that screening, that was the first time we were able to say, "Hey guys, this is what the show is. This is what it's about.
Mhm.
I know you're used to the super sweet sitcom version, but this is actually a whole entire different genre, adult animation. And by
Right.
the rules of that, we're going to be loud, we're going to be edgy, we're going to be in your face, we're going to have social commentary, and it's going to be even absurd
Mhm.
sometimes. And that's okay. And with that framing, people thanked me for the framing because they had also seen the trailer and the photo online.
Mhm.
And they were like, wow, just that bit of framing I was able to watch this and see it completely different than how
Yeah.
I viewed the
And that's
trailer.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you have. I feel like sometimes we jump to conclusions just based off of the initial thing that we see, and we
Yeah.
want to judge the entire it in its entirety, opposed to actually giving it a chance and giving it some grace and say, you know what, let me give this a shot and see what I think once I watch it. You know,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
then and then from there, if your perception still holds strong as like, oh, I don't like it, it's not for me, or if you like, I absolutely love it, I would love to see another season of this, then
Yeah.
so be it. But there's an audience for everybody, and I feel like in order for us to get more of these shows, we have to be receptive and open to the idea of expanding our world and allowing more things in. And I
Because
feel
you know
like,
what will happen? They'll
yeah, I feel
say,
like this is what you're doing with Good Times. Absolutely.
yeah. And
Hmm.
because if we don't get the audience receptive, and I'm not saying everybody has to love it,
Right. Right.
adult animation is not for everybody. But what tends to happen in our world is then when we go to pitch the shows, they're like, oh, we tried that,
Yeah.
didn't work. And so we're left with audiences yearning to be a part of different genres that the studios are then like, I don't know.
Right.
And we have the task of going out to pitch and try to persuade them.
Hmm.
And so that becomes the uphill battle. And I don't say that to say everybody needs to support it just so we don't have to do that. I say that just to bring an awareness that we are trying in so many different ways and so many different genres to fight these internal battles that people don't know about. That we're like, no, our people love animation. Our people love sci-fi. Our people love adult animation. Let's do this.
Hmm.
And you know, we want people to commit and we want people to go, yeah, let's give that a try. That'll turn out great. And so when you have a show that launches as number 5, it helps that. And that's why I'm so grateful for that, that we can now back it up and go, look, people showed up, and I'm sure there'll be specific numbers on that. But at the end of the day, people showed up.
Yes, and they're still showing up, and
Yeah.
it's a testament to the fact that you guys are in the top 10 on Netflix. That is proof within itself that people
Yes.
wanted to see it and wanted to give it a chance and give it a shot, and it's working.
Yes.
Um, and I feel like it'll continue to work. I feel like people just need to give it a chance. That's it. Um, Now, how did you manage to land this project at Netflix? Did you already have a deal with Netflix, or was this something that that you brought to Netflix's attention?
No, actually, so Netflix has sold this. Netflix and Sony had already sold this project with Steph Curry, Seth MacFarlane, and
Okay,
North Korea
okay,
a
mhm,
year and a half prior to me coming on, and it was at a standstill. And Sony, I had a relationship with the Sony exec. He was actually one of my execs on that TV1 show, Born Again Version,
mhm.
and he reached out to say, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And I was like, "You know what?" I actually said, "No, call Allison."
Really? You weren't sure that this was for you, or
I just thought I just thought I was just finishing up Young Love, and there was still some weeks that I could have consulted on it and wrapped that up in a great way. And I
Mhm.
was, and Allison, I love her to death, and I always say, like, she's my work wife, and she tells these hard jokes just in like she can hang, right? She can
Oh
hang,
yeah.
hang. And so maybe I was a bit intimidated by the genre for myself. And she was like, yeah, well, this is animation. And I got to retire soon. This isn't going to my pension. And I was like, okay, Allison, fine. And, met a couple more times and was like, okay, this is making sense. I can make this make sense. I can do this. And it's that thing that you asked me who I am, right? It's that self-doubt, that anxiety you got to work yourself out of,
Mhm.
um, because you could pass up on a big opportunity. But that's the human being in me that's like, should I? Shouldn't I? And I'm so grateful that I took the risk and made the decision because I'm so proud of what I did.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
Sure, and although I did not know you or did not know of you, I began to become familiar with who you are through Allison and just kind of watching her and seeing, who she was involved with and who was in her inner circle.
Yeah.
So when I saw that you were the showrunner of the show and that this was coming out, I was like, oh, I gotta reach out and see if I can talk to. Initially, I reached out to the both of you, and I was going to try to see if I can have both of you on at the same time. But to your point, Allison told me, nope, I think you should talk to Renata, not me. And I think it'll be an excellent interview, and just reach out to her and see what she says. And I said, okay, I will do that. And I'm so glad that you were, open and willing to speak to me. And this has been a great interview so far.
Of
I truly,
course, and it's interesting. While I was finishing up records, I was actually I was doing both shows at one time. So I would go. I was in the writers' room for Act Your Age. She'd be on set, and so I'd run the room because I was her second, or vice versa. I'd be on set, and she was in the room
mhm,
or in meetings or whatever. And I would have to go. Okay, I have a record session with Cree and JB or Cree or Yvette. I'm like, where are you going to be, up here, or are you going to be, at the at home so you can record it in the booth? And so it would be weird like that. Like I was doing both shows at one time.
mhm, mhm.
It was a trip, but thanks to someone like Allison who would give me that space to leave and go do that and not say no, you have to pick or choose. I mean, that's how we support each other. That's how we look out for each other because you may be in a room where they're like, "Excuse you, like you're on this show," and there was none of that in this. I mean, she was
Right.
just like, "No, you got this. Go ahead." And that's
Yeah.
the beauty of working with people that are supportive like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I've asked all of the questions that I wanted to ask, and if I didn't ask it, it just came up within general conversation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we've talked about Alison Faust. I don't want to make this solely about her, and how amazing she is, but
Listen, let's give Allison Fouts her flowers. She is
yeah,
amazing.
she is amazing, and
Look,
I'm so glad
got the
that.
most.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say when you said she said nope. That's exactly what she does. Nope.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm just so glad that I was able to meet her and speak to her, and she was able to give me this chance and opportunity, because otherwise, I don't know if I would have continued on
Good
attempting to
idea.
do the black script because I was just getting started. I didn't even know what this was going to be about, really, but I knew I had to do something, and
That's
so I
beautiful.
started reaching out to folks, and Allison was the first person that actually decided to give me a shot. She asked me a few questions first, and I told her what I was trying to do, and she said, "Sure, let's do it." And I said, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
That's
Um,
the beauty. That's the beauty of Allison Faust. And I mean, hats off to you for stepping into the uncomfortable space, right? Because that's where our gifts are
mhm,
of taking that leap and changing things up for that thing that's yearning, that's burning inside of you, where you're like, "Ugh, okay, like this is nagging me."
yes,
Um, we need these platforms. We need spaces to, and I thank you for this interview because it gives me a space to say, "Hey, audience, I've
yes,
I've read the comments, and I know the trailer has left you feeling away, the photo has left you feeling away, the baby who's the drug dealer has left you feeling away, but there's so much more to this show."
mhm,
There's some really special episodes in this for me. I met with a friend who had a nonprofit and was lowering the crime in the city,
mhm,
and got a call and was asked to come to the mayor's office with the chief of police, and was told, you know, police officers have summer homes and they have boats, and they're losing
mhm.
their overtime. These numbers
Wow,
are dropping. And just like that, funding was cut and the crime continued to rise. And it had never, Kevin, it had never been clear to me, the visuals on the street with the candles and the balloons.
right,
Those
right,
candle and balloon people, they are making money on this situation.
mm,
Everybody getting the matching t shirts with the deceased kid with the wings, and everybody, from the medic to the funeral home, which was a booming business in
wow,
Chicago. You know what I'm saying? From the medic to the police officer who's doing the overtime to write up the report to the trauma unit, like in the flower company. Like
mhm,
these babies are killing each other, And these people are profiting. And if I could get one little kid who's sneaking to watch the show because he shouldn't be watching it or whatever to understand that and decide that's not going to be me. And because, you can say love each other, we're black, you know, look out for each other, don't kill your brother. You can say that a million times. That message may work, but a lot of times it's not working. But maybe there's a different way to explain this to you, that you take onus of, I'll be damned if they make that money off of me, or if I put money in their pocket, not to mention the person who didn't possibly die but did the shooting, and now they go profit the prison system, right? And the legal system. It's not fair and it's not okay. And we have
Right.
to use these opportunities with our art to talk about this, to say this isn't okay. I'm watching the news, to skip subjects and go to episode 103. Every time I watch the news and there's a woman in court, uh, possibly standing trial for a miscarriage, she looks like us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, women who are in the worst moments of their life, as a woman who's had a miscarriage, imagine having to stand trial because your body did a thing. Like,
Yeah.
that's insanity. But also, like, why aren't we going crazy about this? And I was in the room just to give you my thought process. And I was like, it's messed up because if Roe versus Wade wasn't even on the table.
Hmm.
And I said, what's messed up is if a man catches a football with a hangnail, they run it and loop it on ESPN nonstop, right? And I said,
Oh,
nobody ever says to me, you really did that shit while you were bleeding. Great job. Like,
yeah.
I'm over
Yeah.
here living life and doing things. All of us women are. And then I thought, well, probably because I have shame attached to it, because I remember hearing, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to smell it. I don't want to hear you got cramps. Your brothers better not see it if you got an accident. I want you to roll
Yeah.
that up in the trash. And you better not do anything stupid and get pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, I think the worst thing in the world just happened to me. Like, this has to be horrible.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward, and I'm like, oh, this is why. Like, nobody sat me down to say, if you choose to, this marks the moment where you make people. And as
Mhm.
women, we are the most powerful people on earth, because the reason human beings are walking this earth is because we make them. Like, I had some days
Yes.
when I was working on ears and kidneys and feet, making my body was making sure it was all right. Like, that's phenomenal.
Hmm.
And then it was interesting because when I pitched the concept, there was reluctance, and I was like, that's your shame. And that's why we need to do this episode. Thankfully, I got the support of everyone and we did it. And by the
Yeah.
time, which was about 9 months later, when we got that first animatic, Roe versus Wade had been overturned and women were crying watching it.
Yeah. 'Cause
And it was
so much
just so
pain at
powerful.
that point. Right. Yes.
It
Yeah.
meant so much more all of a sudden. It was just me ranting, being the only girl in the house. And I was like, this is really messed up. And then suddenly it's like, oh no, this is bigger than me.
Hmm.
This is about all of us as women. And, most of us, if not all of us, are raised by post Jim Crow parents,
Right.
who, in that in and of itself, comes with a lot of shame. And so
Hmm.
we could be shamed about a lot, and a lot isn't talked about, and a lot isn't dealt with because of the trauma. And it's like, okay, but we have to stop. We have to stop it. We can't just pass it on. And so it just became a point of like, how do we tell this story and empower young girls,
Right.
especially young Black girls?
Yes.
Menstrual cycles are, and periods and sex tend to be a thing that is freer to talk about,
Yes.
and what I perceive in white households. And it's like forbidden to talk about in Black households, where you're like, nobody really said anything. I just kind of figured it out, or I asked my friend, or I asked my cousin. And
Yeah.
let's sit and have these conversations and put value in us in that way, that it does need to be talked about.
Right.
It
And
does
it,
need
it
to be
it
honored.
helps showcase more of self-worth, knowing
Yes,
yourself, knowing your body, knowing who your partner is, the right person to choose, you know,
yes,
all of those things.
yes,
I have kids of my own. My youngest is my daughter, so I try to make sure that I do those things as a responsible parent and a responsible dad and a Black father as well. So, uh,
yeah,
yeah, it is very important, and I do feel like these things do need to be talked about. And within your show, it's in your face, but it's in your face for a reason.
yeah.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for that. And to the people that if it's not for you, I completely understand. And I even ask with this framing, give it another shot,
Yes.
and see if it works for you. And if it still doesn't, that's okay. It's not for everybody. But also, I'd hate for these messages to go unheard because of the first 2 minute trailer or the images that weren't favorable for you. There's so much more there for our people, from pandering to, I mean, so many conversations to have, to gentrification, to the commodity of our Black artists, right? Like, why are they worth so much more dead than alive? Let's have these
Right.
conversations. And I do want you to get frustrated. I do want you to get mad. And I do want you to say, why is this baby a drug dealer? And I want you to ask those questions because I want all of us to start having conversations. And the great thing is we are. Like,
Mm.
as much as it is a bit of what people are calling negative feedback, people are having conversations this week that they weren't having 3 weeks ago. And I'm forever grateful for
Yes.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they will continue to, and
Yes.
just to be a part of that is enough for now.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So what's next for Renata Shepard?
Renata is developing, figuring out what's that next thing, in the development phase on a couple of projects that can't really talk about yet because they're in that phase.
Uh,
But continuing to use my voice to push the conversations and build great characters. Some things I'll do with my husband, some things I do just by myself, and other projects, even Allison and I talk about developing together again. So it's the gift of riches for sure. But also, coming off the strike and realizing that it was it was a hard battle. We won the battle, but it was also, there's this readjustment of getting back into this, even from the network and studio space of what they're looking for and what they're buying,
right.
and what this temperature and this climate is like. So just putting all those pieces together and looking for that next moment and that next home for the next new project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's
Yeah.
many, many more to come.
Yes.
Much more success for you.
Yes.
And I'm truly excited to see where this goes and where it takes you. And you now have a friend in me, you're a friend of the
Thank
show,
you.
and I will forever follow, all the projects that you're a part of. And I hope that we can continue this relationship. And anytime you have anything else that you would love to talk about or, promote on the show, I will be more than happy to have you back on at any point in time.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you. You don't understand, just to have a space to not have to try to type it and just say, like, this is what it is so important for me.
Mhm.
And, so grateful to Norman Lear, Seth MacFarlane, Steph Curry, Netflix, and Sony for the opportunity, but also special shout out to Norman Lear making his last appearance in episode
Yes.
108 and having him in the booth. We didn't talk about that, but I just want to say that was such an honor and so great that he lives on in animation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank you,
And just
Karen.
Yeah, no problem. And just one last thing, the
Yes.
final thing that I allow all of my guests to do is the final word, where you can share either a piece of advice that you've been given, words of encouragement, or a quote that you live by. You can say all three, or you can choose one of the three. It's up to you.
The one that comes to mind, because we've been talking about Allison Faust so much, is, if I call Allison with any problem, I always get the same answer: fuck them.
I love it.
And, and that's it. And I go, yeah, huh, okay. Welcome.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to say that, and sometimes you have to
Yes,
stand in that too. Um,
yes,
and you like you said earlier, you have to stand 10 toes down, feet in the sand, and
yes,
don't budge, don't move, stay
yes,
still. And all the negative responses, the hate, the naysayers, whatever the case may be, will just fly off, flow off your shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And again, I will say this. I am so grateful that this is happening after the episodes were written,
yes,
because it could have been an impact in one way or the other to push further over the top to say, watch what we show them, or to even pull back. And at this point, because there was no noise while we were doing this, I'm completely clear that this is what it was supposed to be, and I stand behind it. I'm so proud of it, and I'm so excited for the people who say, "Hey, I felt a way, but I watched it, and now, like, where's number 11, or where's the next season?" I'm so grateful for people who open their minds and their hearts to the possibility, and were pleasantly surprised.
right, absolutely. And fingers crossed, there may be a season two. Who
Yes,
knows?
who
You know,
knows?
the audience just has to keep watching, keep
Yes,
supporting, and we'll see where it goes.
yes, and thank you again, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yes, Renata Shepard, everybody.
Thank you.